Good evening, I'm Erin Burnett. Out front tonight, an accused Capitol rioter flips. CNN now learning that one of the people charged after storming the U.S. Capitol has agreed to help the Justice Department in its case against the Proud Boys leadership. It's a significant move, and according to an attorney familiar with the case, it could lead, ready for this, to more severe charges against those allegedly involved in the insurrection. Well, that comes with great implication, right, for anybody who could possibly be blamed for the insurrection? Okay, this is where the former Republican House Speaker John Boehner enters, because he is squarely placing the blame on Trump for the deadly attack on the U.S. Capitol. According to excerpts from his new book obtained by the New York Times, Boehner writes, he never minces words, Trump incited that bloody insurrection for nothing more than selfish reasons, perpetuated by the BS he'd been shoveling since he lost a fair election the previous November. Like I said, Boehner says it like it is. He doesn't mince words. It's a stunning charge, though, from the former Republican House Speaker. Boehner then goes on to say, I quote him again, some of the people involved did not surprise me in the least. The legislative terrorism that I'd witnessed as Speaker had now encouraged actual terrorism. Again, let's just be clear, the significance of this. The former Republican Speaker calling the insurrection itself actual terrorism brought on by members of his own party, people he served with, like Congressman Mo Brooks.
Now, our ancestors sacrificed their blood, their sweat, their tears, their fortunes, and sometimes their lives to give us, their descendants, an America that is the greatest nation in world history. So I have a question for you. Are you willing to do the same? Today is the day American patriots start taking down names and kicking ass.
And that's what they did. That is Mo Brooks, the same man that Trump endorsed today for a U.S. Senate seat. And what you just saw Mo Brooks saying was what he said to that Trump crowd on Insurrection Day in the Washington Mall, on Insurrection Day. So Trump says today about Mo Brooks, few Republicans have as much courage, caps, and fight, caps, as Alabama Congressman Mo Brooks. Adding Brooks is fighting for voter integrity like few others. Let's just be honest, the only thing Brooks has had the courage to fight for is Trump's big lie. That would not be voter integrity. But Trump is not the only one trying to whitewash the events of that Insurrection Day. Tucker Carlson is now trying to gaslight his viewers into thinking the insurrection was no big deal.
They didn't have guns, but a lot of them had extremely dangerous ideas. They talked about the Constitution and something called their rights. Some of them made openly seditious claims. They insisted, for example, that the last election was not entirely fair.
Dangerous ideas like the Constitution or their rights? Did you watch what happened that day? Those are not the ideas they were talking about. And it wasn't just talk. They had a noose that they had put near Capitol grounds. And by the way, as to this, they didn't have guns. The only thing dangerous was their ideas. A police officer was killed. 140 other officers were injured. Cracked ribs, smashed spinal discs, officers hit with baseball bats, flagpoles, and pipes. An officer lost an eye. Another reportedly lost the tip of their right index finger. And yet now we're hearing they didn't have guns. All their extremely dangerous things were ideas like the Constitution. Are you kidding me? All of this happened because of the big lie that the election somehow wasn't fair. John Boehner calls it BS. He's right on that. I can't believe there continues to be a need to repeat such basic fact as this, that the election was fair.
We are not aware of any widespread evidence of voter fraud, much less that would have affected the outcome in the presidential election.
We have not seen any widespread voter fraud.
And remember what Attorney General Bill Barr told the Associated Press, quote, we have not seen fraud on a scale that could have affected a different outcome in the election. To use Boehner's words, what Trump and his sycophants are pushing is BS. And months later, 3 months later, they're still pushing it, trying to cloak it in some, the only dangerous thing that they were there talking about was the Constitution. Jim Acosta is out front live in Washington. Jim, you, of course, covered Trump for 4 years in the White House and his campaign before that. And after everything that happened on January 6th, by his actions today, he comes out and endorses Mo Brooks. It's clear that he has not learned any lessons from it.
No, of course, Aaron, he has not learned any lessons. He doesn't think he needs to learn any lessons. And the insurrection on January 6th has propagandists across the Republican Party now. That's very clear from what you just laid out a few moments ago. But I think getting back to whether Donald Trump has learned lessons, I mean, look at the Mo Brooks endorsement. This is somebody who was speaking there on January 6th, as you were just pointing out. But I talked to a Trump advisor, an ally of the former president earlier today, who said this is a mistake for Trump to endorse Mo Brooks. It's going to remind people of what happened on January 6th. But let's go back to the Boehner book that you were just talking about, Aaron. I think it's a perfect illustration of what's going on. Yes, the former speaker tears into Donald Trump, says he's responsible for the insurrection on January 6th. But I talked to a GOP operative who I think put it very well earlier today. The Republican Party is not listening to John Boehner. The Republican Party is listening to Donald Trump. Trump advisor Jason Miller put out a statement earlier today describing Boehner as a swamp creature. And if you need more evidence that the party is listening to Trump, look what's going to take place this weekend down at Mar-a-Lago. Donald Trump is going to speak at the RNC donor retreat. It is going to happen at Mar-a-Lago Saturday evening. He is going to be alongside many other leading figures inside the Republican Party. And it's just another shining example, disturbing example, Aaron, that much of the Republican Party has not backed away from Donald Trump. They are enabling Donald Trump. So, no, he has not learned any lessons from January 6th because much of the party is making sure of that.
Right, and then they're behind him. All right, Jim Acosta, thank you very much. Right. So I want to go straight now to Matthew Dowd, chief strategist for the Bush-Cheney presidential campaign of 2004, and Kathleen Blue, author of Bring the War Home, The White Power Movement and Paramilitary America. So thank you both for being with me. Matt, let me just start with you. Boehner said that Trump cost Republicans the Senate in 2020, which, you know, shouldn't be a controversial thing. Just ask any Republican in Georgia. Now Trump is endorsing a candidate in a Senate primary race that's a year away. And not just any candidate, right? But a candidate who was there with him on the podium, on the dais, that day of the insurrection, spreading the big lie. How significant is this?
Well, to me, and I know you'll talk to Kathleen somewhat about this, but to me, there's a huge problem, and it's Donald Trump just represents an effect of the problem, not the cause of the problem in this. And I wouldn't say Donald Trump was a proximate cause of the election losses and the trouble the Republican Party is in. But really, it's a much bigger thing, which is the Republican Party today. This is the first time in American history where the white supremacy movement of America, which showed its face on Insurrection Day on January 6th, has fully taken over one of the legacy parties in America. This is the first time. We've had others. We've had George Wallace in the Independent Party. We've had the Know Nothing movement. We've had elements of the South, which had white supremacy and a part of the Confederacy. But never have we before been one party been completely taken over. And why? It's because that's where the voters are. And unfortunately, I would say America has many great things, but the soil of America, part of the soil of America, this is in the soil of America. And what was different today is we have one legacy party that's completely adopted it, which is a minority of the country, but it is powerful, along with one major cable network. And we've never had that before in America. We've had elements of it, we've had pockets of it, but we've never had that before. And that's the difficult spot we're in as a country today.
So, Kathleen, let me ask you, because, you know, as Matthew brings up, the cable network, right? Tucker Carlson is a smart guy with a giant platform and a large audience. So I don't know why he would say something counterfactual like he did, but this is revisionist history, right? That he's putting out there. There's nothing dangerous about these people. Gosh, they didn't even have guns. They just had some ideas, right? I mean, it's false. How dangerous is all this?
It's incredibly dangerous. And I think, you know, this is a particularly bold revision that comes not very long after an event that we all watched. That, you know, it's hard to make the argument that they had no guns, that this wasn't intended as a violent action. Some of the people referenced in this particular repainting of the events are people who had quite a few guns, both that they stashed in backpacks outside the Capitol building and that they had in arsenals at their homes. People who had zip ties, who were on their way to very likely kidnap and harm legislators. And now we have news today that these groups are beginning to turn on each other, that we're going to begin to get the kind of information that will let us see what history has indicated is very likely, which is that these groups are interconnected, that the assault on the Capitol was pre-planned, and that it was an attack on our democracy. We know that that's what they were doing because that's what they've been doing for decades, if not generations. And we know that although January 6th was not intended as a mass casualty attack by white power groups and others, that will be the next step. So we don't have time for this revisionist history. It's critical that we act now.